Hi guys, how are you today? Hope you're doing well. I'm gonna tell a story about a person who dreamed about being the greatest king in the world. Please subscribe us before telling the story. Thank you so much.
The fall of an emperor. In the summer of 1812, the most powerful man in the world stood at the edge of destiny. The fall of an emperor. In the summer of 1812, the most powerful man in the world stood at the edge of destiny. Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte, conqueror of Europe, master of armies, was about to make the greatest mistake of his life. He believed he was unstoppable, but pride would bring him to his knees. By 1812, Napoleon ruled an empire larger than Rome at its height, from Spain to Poland, from the Mediterranean to the North Sea. Kings bowed to him. Only one nation still defied his will: Russia. Tsar Alexander I had once been his ally. They shook hands after the Treaty of Tilsit, promising peace. Peace with Napoleon was a fragile dream. When Russia broke away from his trade blockade against Britain, the emperor saw it not as politics, but as betrayal. And so, Napoleon made the decision that would change history. He would invade Russia and crush anyone who dared to defy him. In June 1812, Europe trembled. Napoleon assembled the Grande Armée, over 600,000 soldiers from every corner of his empire: French, German, Italian, Polish, an army of nations united under one man's ambition. They crossed the river Neman into Russian soil under a blazing summer sun. Napoleon expected glory. Instead, he found emptiness. The Russian army refused to fight. They retreated deeper and deeper into their own country, burning villages, crops, and bridges as they went. The land itself turned against the invaders. The French soldiers marched for miles, hungry, thirsty, and exhausted, chasing an enemy that refused to stand and fight. The vast silence of Russia swallowed them whole. Finally, in early September, the Russians turned to fight near a small village called Borodino. It was one of the bloodiest battles in history. Cannons roared. Bodies fell by the thousands. Smoke covered the sky. When the guns fell silent, over 70,000 men were dead or wounded. Napoleon had won the ground, but not the war. His generals begged him to stop, to retreat, to regroup. But Napoleon refused. Moscow was only a few days away. And in his mind, victory was already his. That night, fires broke out across Moscow. Russian patriots had set their own capital ablaze rather than let the French take it. Within days, most of the city was reduced to ashes. Napoleon stood at the Kremlin window, watching the city burn. He had taken Moscow, but there was no Tsar, no peace, no triumph. Only smoke, ash, and cold wind. Still, he refused to retreat. He waited 5 long weeks, for an answer that never came. Temperatures plunged below minus 30 degrees. Horses froze where they stood. Soldiers collapsed in the snow, their uniforms stiff with ice. What had begun as an army of 600,000 men was now a column of ghosts. Russian forces attacked from all sides, cutting off supplies and slaughtering stragglers. At the crossing of the Grande River, thousands drowned as the ice broke beneath them. Napoleon, once seen as a god of war, now rode in silence, his face pale and his eyes hollow. He whispered to one of his officers, "From the sublime to the ridiculous, there is only one step." By the time he returned to France, fewer than 100,000 soldiers were left. The rest were dead, captured, or missing. Europe saw its chance. The once invincible emperor was vulnerable. Prussia, Austria, and Britain rose against him. 2 years later, Paris fell. Napoleon was forced to abdicate and sent into exile on the island of Elba. But even then, his pride refused to die. He escaped, returned to France, and for a brief moment, 100 days, the eagle flew again, until Waterloo ended everything. In exile on St. Helena, far from everything he had ever conquered, Napoleon finally faced it. He wrote for hours every day about glory, destiny, and fate. But deep inside, he knew what destroyed him. Not the Russians, not the British, not betrayal. It was his own pride, the belief that no one, not even nature, could stand in his way. History remembers Napoleon as both hero and villain, a genius who dreamed too big and fell too far. But his history is timeless because every empire, every ambitious, every man who believes he's untouchable eventually faced the cold wind of reality.